flee. Thousands of rats run wolves, no one can care about anyone. Who are they? Long, long ago, they were called Han people, now they are called Jin people. Correct. For the Jin people, the once strong man has long become a historical term. Not only is the momentum of a strong man who is clearly offended, he will be punishable even if he is far away is absent, it is even more serious. It was so serious that thousands of people were chased by only 30 Huron cavalry. They didn't seem to have thought that they were the crowded side, and as long as they were willing to work hard, they would be able to kill the chasers with their numbers. Crying, and various sounds were noisy and messy. The husky cavalry chasing behind the fugitive laughed wildly, like a cat teasing a mouse. They caught up and cut a few, even there is free to stop and kill. Was 340 AD, which was the 6th year of Xiankong in the Eastern Jin dynasty, 3rd year of Han Xianxing in the Han dynasty, 28th year of Jianxing in the former Liang dynasty, 6th year of Jianwu after Zhao Jianwu, and 3rd year of the founding of the country. After Zhao's battle in the Eastern Jin dynasty was unfavorable, but because of the conflicts between the two sides, there were countless refugees. Shihu, the ruler of the later Zhao, ordered the communists in the middle school to play with the Jin people as much as possible. In this way, after 316 AD, another great escape on the land of the Central Plains began. The Jin people living in the Central Plains had to flee. Originally, they lived in the Ho Zhao country as the lowest class. Later Zhao publicly promulgated the law, stating that the Chinese people were innocent in robbing the Jin people, and killing the Jin people could be atonement for their crimes with wool skin. What is a countryman? In the Western Zhou dynasty, it refers to citizens living in cities, and also refers to groups that have the right to join the army. At the time of the 16th dynasty of the Eastern Jin dynasty, the Chinese were proposed by Shi Li, the founding emperor of Zhao Zhuo. The reason was that Hu people were a scornful name, and Hu people could not be called Hu people, they could only be called Chinese people. Shi Li was originally from the Ji tribe who entered the country. After he became emperor in Xiongguo, now Xingtai, Hebei, he was very annoyed that the people of his country called the Ji people the Hu people. He enacted a decree: no matter what you say or write articles, it is strictly forbidden to use the word Hu, and those who violate it will not be amnesty. Therefore, he can only call Hu people a Chinese. Now, after Zhao's attack on the Eastern Jin dynasty was not smooth, the Hu people in the country began to vent their anger with the Jin people in the territory, and a new round of massacre had begun. The Jin people did not dare to resist and could only flee. A weird thing happened. Facing the Jin people fleeing south from the Central Plains, the Hu people were chasing after them. The Eastern Jin court didn't know why it was out of consideration, and did not accept the fleeing comrades. All kinds of tragedies in the world began in those people. The poor people played one after another. Fled all the way, but anyone who ran a little slower was already dead, and there were almost no young and old in the team of fugitives, and most of them seemed to be young and strong. I don't know what the situation is. The huge fleeing team does not get together for a day, but the leader has never appeared, which is tantamount to a mess. Long escape, Hu people chased and killed, the Eastern Jin court refused to accept them. They were actually desperate, and they were still running because of an instinct to survive. Hu Qi was not in a hurry when he was chasing and killing them. They knew too well what the situation was facing the target they were chasing and killing. The Eastern Jin dynasty did not accept it, and the group of people could only flee forever. Since there is nowhere to shelter the target, no one will come to rescue, and there is no sense of resistance, then play slowly, you can have more fun in this long killing. The people who flee seem to have a kind of herding effect. They are the ones who chase the fastest. It seems that the people who have never thought of chasing and killing are only 30 hyuki. They only need to run away. Can't catch up with everyone. Hu Qi laughed and stopped chasing. They regarded the thousands of people as nothing. They turned out to be dismounting and holding weapons to chop off the limbs of the corpse. After listening to the exchange, they said that they were looking for a good place to light a fire and roast them to eat. That's right. The Huqi who chased the fugitive Jin people belonged to the Ji tribe. It was the Chinese history that was taken by the Huns to East Asia from the western regions, West Asia, or some other place in the history of China. Become the overlord of the Central Plains, the last cannibal in Chinese history Ji tribe. On the high in the distance, one person rode on a war horse, watching from a distance, fleeing and hunting down. He was wearing a red shirt and black armor. He had a flat head without a helmet. In 340 AD, Jin people would tie their hair as long as they had the conditions. They also emphasized that the parents should not be lightly ruined by the body, hair, and skin. People. His name is Lu Yan, and he is indeed not a Jin, or he did not belong to this era. The flat head is because of repeated combing, otherwise it should be a length shawl. Lu Yan is from 2016. He retired from the Marine Corps and stayed at home for half a year. He was called up in May. He had an accident on the way back to the army to report. He woke up again in 339 AD. It has been nearly 8 months since he crossed over today, and the time has come to 340 AD. 340 AD is not well known, and perhaps no one in 100 people knows what age it is. In fact, starting from 317 AD, the land of China entered the historical stage of the 16 kingdoms of the Eastern Jin dynasty, which is also commonly known as the Five Husbandry China period. 5 random flowers. That was a northern Han. No, the Han dynasty had long since perished, and the bravery who belonged to the strong man were swept into the dust of history. They were no longer strong and brave Han, but they were weak and inferior Jin people. Wuhulyuan Hua belongs to the age when the northern Jin people are at the bottom of society, and may even be almost killed. How many heroic stories in the 3 kingdoms are just for the fight for power and profit, ruining the situation of see guest clothes, and depleting the essence and population of the nation. Those so-called heroes desperately worked hard, and they turned their backs on success or failure. In the end, only the Sima family was cheaper. If the story of the 3 kingdoms is somewhat ambitious and tragic, Cao Wei has Jianan style and Bia Wuvan and Xiangnu, Sun Wu has a prosperous economy and a Wayne-inspiring Baiyu, Lu Shu has loyalty and conquer the southern barbarian. What about the Sima who unified the 3 kingdoms? Sima has a whole family of 9 sons, all heroes. But what did it bring? Almost nothing beneficial was brought, but instead staged the 8 Kings Rebellion, leading the Huron to go south, becoming the first dynasty in Chinese history to be destroyed by the Huron, the Western Jin dynasty. Nandu in the clothes seems to have a sense of literature and art when speaking, but in fact it is just a group of bereaved dogs discarding almost all the people or things that can be discarded, and it is a complete failure of the embarrassing escape. What did the southward move of the Jin room bring? It was the Jin dynasty that could go on stealthily, and then countless people left the Hu people to torture and kill as much as they wanted. Not only were they to be killed, the Hu people even ate violently, so that the Jin people in the north and central plains wanted to have them after their deaths. A touch of loess seems to be difficult. It was eaten by a husky, and after a period of digestion, it was excreted into feces. Lu Yan passed through. Fortunately, he was not abandoned by the heavens, gods, demons, or aliens. He got a system called Age of Empires II Conqueror. Anyhow, it gave him a golden finger, while being able to settle down and stand up for life, is also able to rise up and fight for survival in this age. There is not only Lu Yan riding solo on the high slope, behind him is the strength accumulated over a long period of time, from the military units produced by the system, and there are also Jin people who are gathered and rescued intermittently. 10 cavalry, 30 swordsmen, 50 archer, 150 spearmen, these are troops produced by Lu Yan using the system. There are nearly 100 people who have all kinds of weapons. They are Jin people who were taken in and trained by Lu Yan back and forth. And in order to train them, perhaps it is also to accumulate strength, even if Lu Yan, who has the golden finger, was earlier, it took a full half a year to take action. Major, Sentinel has explored a radius of 10 miles, UU reading www.uuganshu.com did not find another Hu Chi. Well. The person who spoke to Lu Yan was a middle-aged man dressed as a scribe. Tian Shuo was taken in by Lu Yan a month ago. He was originally a county chief who served in the post-Zhao regime. The Hu people went mad as if they were slaughtering the Jin people again. Tian Shuo didn't know what he thought, and even took the lead in agitating the Jin people under the rule to flee. He had the courage, but he didn't have the corresponding coordinating ability. He took more than 300 people to flee. In less than half a month, he was lost or killed all the way. Before meeting Lu Yan, only less than 100 people were left to linger. Lu Yan can order the military units produced by the system in his mind, but he still raised his hand, buckled the helmet on his head, fastened the strap, and shouted loudly, "All soldiers, follow me! Kill!" After, Lu Yan already drove his horse to charge. Behind him were the system soldiers who followed up silently for the first time. On the contrary, the trained Jin also shouted "Kill Hu" before moving forward. Thousands of desperate people saw the army emerging from Jayapo. They seemed to think that they were ambushed, and they all screamed and fell to the ground. Lu Yan didn't understand why the Han people have the same blood and common ancestors, and why the Han people represent brave and good fighting, but how can those who become Jin people become weak by a different name? He ignored the desperately fledgling man who fell to the ground, and rushed straight to the Huron who hurriedly threw away the unbaked human body parts in his hands and was about to climb up on the horse again. Kill Hu. During the new book period, please collect and recommend votes for support. Grateful. UU Reading Book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to read. The golden finger obtained through crossing is too important to Lu Yan. Not only can it develop people's livelihood and the military, but it also provides him with unexpected benefits, that is, it can bless the value of force. Yes, it is the force value. Lu Yan's own force value is 74. There are a few times in Age of Empires 2 Conqueror. He has an additional attribute of +5 in the Dark Age and has reached the Feudal Age. At that time, it became +10, and then every military unit he produced had a blessing of 0.001, which is equivalent to a force value close to 85 now. If according to Aoding Technology's Three Kingdoms heroes, a force of 85 can be regarded as a first-class military commander. Although it is incomparable to the average military commander of 100 super rank, there is definitely no problem in dealing with miscellaneous soldiers. After crossing, Lu Yan is not the first time he has been fighting, nor is he charging alone, but with 10 cavalry. There is no reason not to kill the general immediately while the bully is in a panic. The Hu people occupy the central plains, but the Hu people don't understand production and only understand destruction. The 30 or so Hu people who chased and killed the fugitive Jin were not regular troops. They did not lack war horses but extremely lacked metal weapons. Most Hu people's weapons were nothing more than mace and the like. Amid the rush of horseshoes, Lu Yan and others ushered in the first wave of arrows. They were bone arrows shot by the Hu people. Lu Yan only needed to protect the vital points. Even the armored parts were shot by bone arrows. The qualitative arrow hits the armor and falls off, and it is impossible to shoot through the armor. Of the remaining cavalry without armor, 3 of them were shot down. Lu Yan led the rest of the cavalry forward, followed by nearly 300 infantry. The sudden appearance of such an armed force has surprised the Hu people, causing them to want to fight and escape, forming a substantial split. The strange screamed and screamed. A dozen Hu Chi who chose to fight against each other met with Lu Yan and other cavalry. More than half of the Hu people fell from the horse, and Lu Yan fell down on his side. Sure enough, the system of scout cavalry is still not good, and you can only wait for the system to be upgraded to the Castle Age to produce professional cavalry units. Said it was slow, but that was fast. After the hedge, Lu Yan and the others went straight to the other husbands who were hesitant. The armed forces that appeared suddenly started fighting with the Hu people. Thousands of people who fled have all emotions, but no one chooses to kill Hu together. Almost all of them are young and strong. If there are older generations or people who are knowledgeable in history, seeing that Lu Yan's army is scarlet and black armor, he must be able to recognize that it is an army from the strong man period. Military uniform. The army of the Eastern Jin dynasty now has a white robe, followed by a Zajia-style armor. Thousands of people who fled could not understand where Lu Yan and others came from, but they would never think that they belonged to the Eastern Jin imperial court. The cavalry was in front, and the pawns were behind. The various infantry produced by Lu Yan with the system have been nicknamed biochemical robots by him. What are the characteristics of robots? It means to obey unconditionally after entering the command. They are in the forefront of the spearmen, the swordsmen are divided into left and right slanted wings, and the archers are behind, stepping on and advancing in a neat step. Hu Qi, who crossed with Lu Yan and other cavalry soldiers, did not run very far and immediately ran into a shower of arrows. The spearmen were still charging forward. Hu Qi, who had not been shot down by the rain of arrows, hit the hedgehog made of spears. The men and horses were pierced by spears, but the spearman advanced steadily and bravely. Knocked down, as long as it is not fatal, he still gets up from the ground and quickly keeps up with the advancing team. Following the charge of the Jin soldiers, they were greatly encouraged to see that Robs was so fierce and undaunted to die. They shouted, "Kill Hu! Kill Hu!" and rushed to the Hu men who fell to the ground and could move. Several people surrounded him. In the past, weapons were hacked. The fight didn't end so quickly, but Lu Yan and others were fighting, and it was not that no one would take care of the thousands of people who had fled stupidly in place. Tian Shuo led some people to shout to the fugitives. They shouted more clearly. Those who want to survive can join the Hanbu. What the is Hanbu? In fact, Lu Yan believes that he is definitely not a Jin, but a Han. The cultural people of the Jin dynasty, including Tian Shuo, had a different understanding of the Han people. It was all caused by Lu Yuan, the Huns, who destroyed the Western Jin dynasty and established the Han dynasty. The Han, former Zhao, founded by Lu Yuan has long been annihilated, but the Huns called themselves Han, and the history of the establishment of the Han kingdom was not long ago, so that people all over the world think that calling themselves Han is equivalent to the Han of the Huns. Lu Yan didn't know the history of the 16 kingdoms of the Eastern Jin dynasty that much. He called himself a Han, and of course he was considered to be the Huns. He didn't establish a country, so it could only be the Han tribe, so the Han tribe is equivalent to a tribe or tribe. The Huns are not merciful to the Jin people, but the Han kingdom, former Zhao, of the Huns was wiped out by Shi'al, a Ji tribe in 329 AD. The Ji people who became the overlord of the Central Plains, the post-Zhao Ke they established was much more brutal than the Huns. In addition, the Jin people who were still alive were more impressed with the hardships they suffered in recent years, and it didn't matter whether the Han tribe was a tribe of the Huns or not. Tribal. We don't want everyone. Tian Shuo was dressed as a scribe. He raised his head slightly and his face was full of arrogance. Those who have craftsmanship are the priority, those who own family members are the priority, and those who are willing to become the Han are the priority. I have read several priorities, but it can't stop the fugitives' enthusiasm for life security. Once again, the once strong men have long been swept into the dust of history. Jin people, especially those who were thrown into the north and central plains, have become weak and tame lambs for various reasons. The more arrogant Tian Shuo is, the more Jin people look forward to joining. Now, it is a consensus that Jin people find a good master to have their livelihood security. If someone is willing to take them in, then they will no longer be refugees. It would be better to be taken in by husbands, or at least they can get a shelter. If those Jin people who fled knew the facts of Lu Yan's so-called Han dynasty, they realized that Luoyang is now only a corner in Chongguang County, located in Qingdao, in Qingzhou, with only 2,000 people and 500 armed. I don't know yet. Would you like to join the Han Dynasty? Of course, the above-mentioned civilian and armed forces are those developed by Luoyang excluding the system. The development of the system is still very impressive, but this will be mentioned later. Bloody Luoyang turned around. He didn't get off his horse either. When he wanted to say something to Tianchuo, the other party spoke first. Tianchuo was very respectful, the king. The villain does not humiliate his mission and has gathered these refugees. Luoyang himself doesn't like being called a king, and always makes him feel like a bandit road tyrant. By the way, he actually couldn't understand the language of this era after he traveled. Fortunately, the system comes with a set of translation system. As a result, he can understand and speak all languages. The language of the land of China has never been fixed. Each dynasty has its own Mandarin, and then there is a dialect in one place, and most of the dialects are called ancient Chinese. Modern Mandarin, is actually the Beijing accent that precipitated during the Qing dynasty. Very good. Luoyang felt that the time was urgent, so he would make a long story short. According to the prior arrangement, you take them and set off first. The place where they are located is called Dongguan County, not Guangdong. It is located in modern Zhuzhou County. They have been active in Donghai County, Lanzhou County, etc. before. Naturally, Zhao Dong Chaotic sees the time to gather the refugees. Increase the population. Luoyang knew that before Shihu attacked Liang and the Eastern Jin dynasty, he had vented his anger on the Jin people in China, causing a large number of Jin people to flee south, and then took some people out for a stroll. He found that there was chaos everywhere during this stroll, thinking this is a lot to do, so he wandered out of control. Reading www.yunshu.com. Before and after, Luoyang has led people to gather 60,000 to 70,000 refugees, but it is extremely frustrating how much he can safely send back, probably because of the mentality of spreading fishing nets. Great King! You have been away from the tribe for so long, you should go back. Tianchuo actually doesn't know where Luoyang's foothold is. He is a Jin, and his mentality is unique, especially after he knows that Luoyang has no heirs and no elders. Always persuading, otherwise, I am afraid of accidents. Speaking of it, if Luoyang is really a Huns and he has left the tribe for so long, his power is very likely to be taken away. In other words, if he did not have the golden finger support, he might not come out so confidently. It's time to go back. Luoyang's mansion is not so deep yet, showing an expression of both nostalgia and worry. I don't know how the development is going. Tianchuo wanted to turn off, thinking that Luoyang was worried about the instability of the tribe, so he hurriedly continued to persuade, and said, "Is there any place the king can use the villain? Just ask." Luoyang didn't think too much, he said, "It's useful to you." Tianchuo had a look of expectation, but after listening to Luoyang, he was very disappointed. Luoyang just asked Tianchuo to take care of the refugees who had gathered together. There was no arrangement at all for the rest, let alone Tianchuo's own thinking, to entrust him with important tasks or something. How far we can get mixed up depends on how many people we can get this time. So, it's very important. Yes, King. The villain must do his best. During the new book period, please collect and recommend votes for support. Grateful. You reading book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to read. The stern wind blows the frost and the seaweed is withered. The Han family has 300,000 soldiers, and the general and leader Huo prostitutes Yao. The enemy can be destroyed, the head is destroyed, the intestines of the Hu and the blood are worn, Hu no one, Han Dao Kang. Your Majesty's life is 3,000 frosts. But the song is so big that the wind and clouds are flying, and the warriors are guarding everywhere. Lu Yan was singing loudly, the phrase human man, Han Dao Kang. Your Majesty's life is 3,000 frost. But the song is flying in the sky, and the warriors guard the square. It is repeated again and again, and people who can sing can listen to it. Come with a weird face. Hu Ren said Hu Ren Ren, Han Dao Kang. Nothing surprised the Jin people more than this. They began to wonder if they understood something wrong. Song is not a song, it is a poem. It comes from Human Man by Li Bai, a poet in the Tang dynasty. It is probably one of the few poems that Lu Yan can remember so clearly. Tian Chuo has been trying to understand what kind of person Lu Yan is, and also wants to understand what kind of tribe the Han dynasty is. He couldn't get any answers from those soldiers wearing scarlet shirts, but got some specious answers from some people who were also born in Jin. Those Jin people who have followed Lu Yan for a long time told Tian Chuo that Lu Yan has always claimed to be a Han Chinese. In terms of daily food, it is definitely a rich man, but no one knows how many people are in the tribe and where the main activities are, but the soldiers are really brave and not afraid to die. Today, the chaos is okay. If the Western Jin dynasty, which was founded only 37 years after the destruction of the Dongguo, was conquered by the Huns, Emperor Huai and Emperor Hua were both captured. The Huns established the Han Kingdom, later changed to Zhao, and the Ji tribe, who had been slaves to the Huns, destroyed the Han, former Zhao, and established the Zhao. The establishment of Haozhou did not end the chaos, and even the Ji tribe with a population of only a few 100,000 became the overlord of the Central Plains, further exacerbating the chaos. Ji people are not only cannibals, they are also the first race to establish a class in the Central Plains. According to the regulations of Emperor Zhao, the Ji people are the first class, the Hu people of the Di tribe and the Huns are the second class, the wild beasts are the third class, and the Jin people in the territory are the fourth class. It is not a joke that the beasts are higher than the Jin people, because the Emperor Zhao issued a hunting ban against the Jin people, stipulating that the Jin people cannot harm wild animals. What a tragic era that should be! Jin people are even worse than wild beasts. Hundreds of thousands of Ji people rule the entire Central Plains. The Central Plains are full of Hu people. In fact, how many Hu people are in the entire Central Plains can't be said by anyone. In general, the number of Hu people living in the Central Plains should be between 2 million and 2.5 million. Should the Jin people living in the Central Plains be similar? There are only 4 or 5 million people living on the vast land. With the habits of all dynasties and dynasties, most of them live in a concentrated city. You can imagine how barren it is. The sky is blue, the wild is vast, the wind blows the grass and the cows and sheep are low. The blood of men, the heroic look. Call me, the rivers and seas echo. The mountains are silent, and the waters are dead. Running horizontally and horizontally highlights the edge. The front Chili Chuan, under the Yin mountain. The sky is like a dome, covering all fields. But it was hidden by Lu Yan. Jin people who are a little literate, hear Lu Yan singing all the way, a bit fascinated. Speaking of it, the Chinese nation can actually be said to be a romantic nation. People may not have a name in history, but good poetry can be passed on for generations. From the Book of Songs in the pre-Qin period of the ancient times, to the Fu in the Han dynasty, the poems in the Sui and Tang dynasties, and the Ci in the two songs, they accompany so many magnificent waves and golden horses and iron horses, showing the prosperity and fleeting years. Wilderness, there are wilderness everywhere, patches of taller grass, deserted and uninhabited everywhere, and occasionally pass by the ruins that may be villages. Lu Yan led a large group of people all the way north. Is really barren. The cities that used to be lively and prosperous, they now appear to be dilapidated. There are very few inhabitants in the city, but it must be mostly humiliated, and now all Jin people are busy fleeing for their lives. It stands to reason that Lu Yan took a large group of people on the way, and he should have attracted the attention of Ho Zhao long ago. In fact, it is not. If it happened near the capital of Xiongguo, it might attract attention, but the post-Zhao regime is very busy now. They are busy cleaning up the mess, and they are also busy killing them internally. Who has the spare time to care about a group of Huns taking advantage of the chaos? The slave-catching team. Oops! It's not wrong. Not only the Jin people thought that Liu Yan was a Huns, but those in the later Zhao also thought that Liu Yan was a tribe of the Huns. Who made the Han represent the Huns in the 16 Kingdoms period of the Eastern Jin dynasty, so there was Liu Han. Former Han, later Han, there are all kinds of Han, and the sign of Han has long been equivalent to the Xiongnu. Even the Di clan established Cheng Han, but the official name is Chu Chi. Liu Yan has realized that pretending to be a Huns is a good idea. Although he is extremely upset in his heart, he is not everywhere that he is not a Huns. Furthermore, he didn't explain clearly, but the depressed emperor not only turned stinky in later generations, but also stinks even during the 16 Kingdoms period of the Eastern Jin dynasty. In such a special period, the identity of a human in the north is equivalent to a protective umbrella. Even if Liu Yan is depressed or unhappy, he must be divided into periods. He vented his depression and unhappiness on the people along the way, regardless of the ethnicity of the person who came. He would do it all if he did it, and bypass it if he didn't do it. People who originally had doubts about the identity of Liu Yan and the Huns, after seeing him doing so, didn't doubt it. Why? Because Jin people are not so courageous, only who will be willing to gratitude and enmity. It's not that no one is blind to what Liu Yan did, but the people who provoke are basically miserable. In the notion that the fist is the boss, Liu Yan has established friendship with some Hu people. On this day, Liu Yan left the brigade with only more than 20 people. He instructed Tian Shuo and others to continue to lead the brigade towards the set goal, and then ran to a city that passed by. Every city seems very dilapidated now. For what reason is it broken? The city wall is a situation where it collapses every some distance, so even though there is a city wall, it is flawed everywhere. There are still gaps in the city wall, and there are no female walls or arrow piles on it, and there are no facilities such as towers. Because there are gaps everywhere in the city wall, entering and leaving the city is not through the city gate at all. Liu Yan and more than 20 people have changed their clothes earlier, and entering the city is not through the city gate. Before they entered the city, they met some people, and the two sides looked at each other far away, and no one deliberately paid attention to each other. After entering the city, they couldn't see a single figure in the city. What they could see was the ruins everywhere. One after another ruins became the characteristics of the city. The more unique ones are the skeletons and dry ones that can be seen everywhere. Baba. Liu Yan and others would naturally not go deep into the city. They just wandered around the periphery. After about 2 hours, the expected person finally appeared. That is a relatively sturdy figure in the city. To put it bluntly, it is either a Ji or Di tribe. 20 strangers suddenly appeared in the city. It would be strange to say that they didn't respond. The people did not appear so abruptly. Someone came to say hello first, then they found a place, and then 20 or 30 husbands came over. Ji people are pure white people with yellow hair, broken hair, green eyes, and high noses. They are mostly with disheveled hair and wear everything. The Di people are of the yellow race, but most of them have hair tied and are relatively well dressed. To put it bluntly, they are closer to the Han people. The so-called Sinicization is more serious. It is not the first time that Liu Yan has dealt with Hu people, knowing that he was throwing stones for directions. From the northwest, Liu Yan has a language translation system. Whatever accent he wants is what accent he wants, and what he wants to say is what he wants to say. Now he is an authentic Qiang accent. Here is the way to go, and I have to continue to the north. The northern part of Qingzhou is not another land boundary, it is Yizhu. He had already compiled it when he came. After Zhao and the Eastern Jin dynasty were fighting on the edge of the Yangtze River, they compiled a set of sayings about wanting to go to the Eastern Jin dynasty, so that it could explain why they went to Yazhu to go to Qingzhou, not other places. These days, the land of the Central Plains is respected by the Ji people, and the person who speaks is naturally the Ji people. The middle-aged Ji people nodded and said, if you want medicinal materials, you must go to the southern land, or to Liaodong. Lu Yan was playing the banner of the Qiang nationality, and he said he wanted to purchase medicinal materials. Qiang people are relatively active now, but they are generally active in the northwest and basins below the plateau, Teguhan, and they are also active in the Shu area. Lu Yan doesn't know whether the Qiang people have established a country, but can only say that he represents a large tribe. In fact, there is a reason for this. The people he leads seem to be stubborn, and they have a military style. Who will not bring a group of samurai with them when they go out in the first place this year? It must be explained that at the beginning of this year, only the Huron will wander around. Jin people don't say whether they can wander, but they definitely don't dare to run around with their guards and swords, or they will have nowhere to avenge justice if they are killed. Yu reading www.yuucananshu.com. The post-Xia regime also had Qiang people as officials, but they were still not as good as Di people. Although they were all second-class people, there would still be differences. This city is just a small place. The so-called people with heads and faces are just like that. Lu Yan talks about it, and those Huron who can't walk for dozens of miles can only listen. Lu Yan is just a limited amount of nonsense, talking about the local customs and things, and don't involve too high-end things. Those Ji and Di people heard that Lu Yan could talk about the customs of so many places, and some of them were also heard by them. They were not simple in their brains, but had limited knowledge, and also that Lu Yan had no trace of Jin from either dressing or life. I just believed that Lu Yan was a person from afar. Ji people are domineering, they are domineering to everyone. The Ji people who call the shots bought some medicinal materials at will, saying that they would sell them to Lu Yan, and they said they would let them set a price at will. Who is Lu Yan? No matter how bad it is, people who have been bombarded by modern information can never understand what it means. Isn't it all about tolls? Give, but can't give too much. If you want to blackmail again, you will be tough and put on a posture of a big deal. This is actually right. Only the Chinese people who teach etiquette like to calm down people. Who people say that everyone gives face to each other and speaks with their fists if they don't give face. After dealing with all the characters, Lu Yan's identity is accepted, and he can just wander around in an open manner. There are many things to see, but he may not be in a good mood after seeing more. During the new book period, please collect and recommend votes for support. Grateful. You reading book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to Read. In a rundown county, there are 2 or 3 big cats in the city. There are humans squatting on the street everywhere in the city, and there are not few human who take pleasure in bullying Jin people. It is normal for Jin people to be bullied. If they can save their lives, Jin people will endure no matter how miserable they are being bullied. Lu Yan stopped and saw a few Ji people pulling a little girl, and a man who looked like a relative of the little girl was holding a Ji family and begging hard. Only when I heard that the girl being pulled was the man. Husbands came to grab the newlyweds when they knew it. Xiaoniang's face can only be said to be very ordinary. After all, the poor are also Jin people, how can they not look like a village woman? In the face of the Jin men's pleadings, the Ji people laughed and ridiculed as much as they wanted, while they punched and kicked them. They didn't hurry to pull the little girl away, and they didn't agree with the Jin men's pleadings. It was just like a monkey playing posture. To say that this scene has not been known how many times it has happened today, everyone is a commonplace appearance. The Jin man who was beaten softened to the ground after a round of punches and kicks. By this time, the Ji people should also tease enough. It should be to take the little girl away, but no. The Ji people seemed to be bullying the wailing and screaming young lady in the street. She just wailed and screamed while staring at her husband who was vomiting blood on the ground. She was soon overwhelmed on the ground. Ji people tried their best. After separating the legs of Xiao Niang, it is estimated that the force was too strong, and the legs of Xiao Niang spread out at a very strange angle, which also made a painful groan. Jin Man was crawling in the face of this situation. He didn't climb a little bit. Some Ji people deliberately stepped on their palms in the past, and the Jin Man's fingers were twisted, but the Jin Man was still crawling. Lu Yan saw the fire in his heart, and it was really unbearable. He stepped forward quickly, kicked the Ji tribe who was holding Xiao Niang to fly, and then opened the bow left and right and punched the two Ji tribes who were bullying him. Fell to the ground. The people who watched the theater were surprised when they saw this scene, and then they groaned and laughed strangely. Even the Ji people who were beaten were first angry and then grinned. Huron, you should grab everything from each other, the difference is who has a hard fist, they only treat it as someone who is passing by and is interested in grabbing food. Xiao Niang is too skinny and too skinny. His arms are so thin that he is like a piece of dry wood, and his chest is barely visible on his naked upper body, only the ribs. She was not moving anymore, because the pain was a hideous face and maintained a posture facing the blue sky. Her eyes looked at the sky with a dim look, and her were clearly broken and hung softly on the ground. There is no ups and downs of the belly without a strand, and it is clearly painful to death. The Jin Man with his twisted fingers finally crawled to the little girl's side. Even if he was nearsighted, he could see that his new wife was dead. Lu Yan is watching Jin Men. If there is a trace of blood at this time, now Jin Men should get up and work hard, right? Yes, the Jin Man got up. He looked at the Ji people around him, and then at Lu Yan. What Lu Yan saw was a distorted face with endless hatred in his eyes. After the Jin Man finished reading it, he seemed to be really desperate, screaming like a wounded beast, stepping open his legs and running at a very fast speed, and then hit a stone on the side of the road with his head, and the scream stopped. His brain splashed everywhere. There were bursts of cheers and weird laughs from the streets, and the husbands were pointing and pointing, saying everything. Lu Yan lifted his foot and left. If he didn't leave, he would really show a terrifying face. At that time, Lu Yan deliberately exposed the war knife around his waist. If the Jin Man wanted to work hard, Lu Yan would be taken away from the war knife very easily. No, the Jin people who have suffered such a tragedy don't want their lives, but they are afraid of fighting the Huron. He would rather hit him to death than fight the Huron. Anger and fire filled Lu Yan's heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys. He could feel as if he was about to explode. Sorrow for its misfortune, anger it's indisputable. I'm not afraid of death, but I chose to hit the head to death instead of desperately. What a shame! To what extent should one's self-confidence be destroyed? Let a person who is not afraid of death be killed by himself, not be killed desperately with others. Lu Yan has already seen what he should see, and he has also seen a lot of what happened to the Jin people in the city. He was afraid that he would not be able to endure it, and took the people away from the city. After leaving the city, they walked north, walked for a while and got in an ambush. They killed 3 trackers, and then walked for a while. They killed a few others and continued to track them. They took some detours before rejoining the brigade. The city has no defensive effect at all. Although it is not comprehensive, it is estimated that there are hundreds of people who can fight. Lu Yan's return to the brigade is nothing else. He needs to make the brigade speed up, not worry about being pursued, but he needs the brigade to go far, and then do something that must be done. He is determined to kill all the Huron in the city, otherwise it will not be enough to calm the anger in his heart, but the premise is that the brigade goes far enough. Won't the king go with the brigade? Tian Shuo looked worried and said, there are more than 100 miles along the way. Although there are no people everywhere, but now the Chinese are chasing and killing the wild people outside the city, once. The savages are only Jin people who don't live in the city, but what kind of Jin people living in the city look like, that's what Lu Yan saw, and even worse, such as being killed and cooked anytime and anywhere. I won't take all the soldiers away. Lu Tai will stay and lead the team. Lu Yan said that Lu Tai can be regarded as a Jin who took in earlier. He said, Lu Tai is a courageous and responsible person. People, he will take you. I will also come to meet you soon. Sekou Tian hesitated for a moment, and said, well then. Lu Yan nodded, and said more formally, don't call me the king in the future. I'm happy to call the king, or the general. Tian Chuo was obviously stunned. When he wanted to say something, Lu Yan had already beaten his horse and left. He looked at Lu Yan's leaving back, and thought, the name Jun Shang is from the ancient and pre-Qin era? This person, who is it? The brigade is really a brigade. It picked up a lot of fleeing Jins on the way. As a result, the number did not decrease but increased to more than 30,000, which brought great difficulty to the team's food supply. That is, Lu Yan has a golden finger, and he can rely on the system to issue orders to NPCs in Chongguang County, which is equivalent to his own contact method that no one can compare in this era. My golden finger can not only give orders to NPCs at a super long distance. You can also watch the map in your mind. Yes, Lu Yan has the golden finger of Age of Empires 2 Conqueror, and he also has a 2D map, but it is not without limitation. For example, he needs to have his own people or buildings as the medium of vision, and his vision extends to a radius of 500 meters. That's why he dared to put down his foundation and chose to take advantage of the chaos inside Zhao Zhao to gather the refugees everywhere. The so-called map is no different from the game interface. Looking at it does not mean moving directly to someone's vision. It is actually like a bird's-eye view from above, but the displayed things are relatively monotonous, such as your own green dots and neutral white dots. The hostile red dot, the display on the terrain is relatively clear. Lu Yan is a very patient man. He took 100 system soldiers and a few courageous Jin people to nest near the city for 3 days. During the period, Lu Yan was not boring either. He could manipulate production and development in his mind, and he could also observe through the green dots of his own side following the brigade. This time it was very useful, at least it revealed almost the entire terrain of Qingzhou, and the map no longer showed the fog of war status. Nested for 3 days. On the night of the 4th day, Lu Yan took the soldiers back to the city. Because the walls were full of gaps, they easily entered the city in the dark. After entering the city, Lu Yan showed a ferocious smile. He gave simple orders to the soldiers, mainly because the soldiers produced by the too complicated order system did not understand. According to his guess, it may be that the IQ of the system characters can only be improved with the age of the system. For example, when he faced the NPCs of the Dark Age, he seemed extremely sluggish, and those NPCs in the feudal age it's better. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Lu Yan is a family touching the door, regardless of whether there is a latch, anyway, it can be easily opened. After entering, there is nothing else but to wipe the neck of the sleeping nonsense. Do you know the sound of a sharp blade wiped from your neck? It was a very crisp squeak sound. Wiping the neck also requires a certain skill, but it doesn't count as a violent swipe, because it will cause blood to rush by cutting off the opponent's arteries. Lu Yan usually wipes the opponent's neck with a sharp blade very quickly, and in the next moment he stretches out his hand to cover the opponent's mouth with an open palm, so that half of his palm can block the spurt of blood. People who have their necks wiped by a sharp blade wake up from sleep with severe pain. When they open their eyes, they are actually quite confused. It takes a second or two to react, but when they react, they already feel unable to breathe. Because the blood blocked their respiratory tract, it could only be a look of pain, and then the eyes were full of despair, waiting to die of suffocation. Lu Yan has always admired his memory. When he wants to remember someone, he can usually remember it. For example, he firmly remembers the husky who twisted Xiao Niang's legs and caused Xiao Niang's pain to death. He is with his subordinates. He killed more than 600 Huron in the city, rescued more than 300 Jin people, and left the group of Huron he saw on the road that day. He he he. Lu Yan knew that his laughter and face must be hideous, but he didn't care. He was thinking about breaking the limbs and bones of these stubborn people one by one, and finally hitting their brains with swift force one by one. You reading book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to read. What? Tian Shuo only knew what Lu Yan was doing in the past few days after hearing the people who acted together. He was shocked and regretful. How can the Lord take such a risk? What risk? Tian Shuo pointed out that Lu Yan had spent several days retaliating because he couldn't see one thing. Our Lord. The middle-aged man with a beard is called Su Zheng. His face is uplifted and relieved. No matter who it is, he really has nothing to say to me. Nowadays, Jin people have one thing in common. Apart from being cautious, they are generally weak in stature. In fact, because of the existence of the hunting ban against the Jin people, they cannot hunt wild beasts. Most of them are also unable to obtain farmland, so they can only feed their hunger with wild vegetables and bark. Grass roots and even guanyin soil are food when they are extremely hungry. Moreover, it is to bear too heavy taxes, and the rations left by hard work are very small. How can it be healthy if there is not enough food and clothing? Lu Yan led some people on patrol, and met Tian Shuo and a few people on the road. Your Majesty. Tian Shuo took the lead and said with a serious face, how can your Majesty take a personal risk? Lu Yan took a few careful glances. The people who came were all literati. In this era, they were collectively called Confucian scholars. The king on his shoulders is not only a man and a woman, it is a tribe, many tribes. Tian Shuo was a little bit distressed, and his face was terrified. If you can't see it, the soldiers can attack and kill. Jun, how can I take the risk personally? I have to tell the truth, whether it is before or after the crossing, Lu Yan is not good for the senses of scholars. There may be a misunderstanding. For example, Confucian students in modern times are so unremarkable. In history, it was Confucian students who turned to the enemy for glory. This led to the saying that Confucian scholars treason and fight for the first and foremost, and widows keep their integrity, but Lu Yan has no favor with Confucian students, or should he say modern people are basically the same to Confucian students. The period of the 16 kingdoms of the Eastern Jin dynasty was the first stage in which Confucian scholars were struggling to seek refuge in the Hu people. They may have this or that kind of suffering, but Lu Yan is more real. Disgust is disgust. Under the premise of preconceivedness, his attitude towards Confucian students has always been different. How good! Tian Shuo's first step improved Lu Yan's view of Confucian scholars, letting him know that in this era, there are not only Confucian scholars who surrender to the enemy, but also some scholars who are not so shameless. Tian Shuo had the courage to flee with his family when it was in crisis. Although courage and strength did not match, it was much better than many other scholars. Hey? I'll pay attention later. Lu Yan nodded and asked, is your business done? The team has swelled to nearly 30,000 people, and there is no organization that can't make it. Lu Yan gathered the literate people, coupled with some capable people, and managed it layer by layer. In fact, Age of Empires 2 Conquerors does not produce professional civil administration units at all. In addition, the intelligence of the characters produced by the system is still worrying. Lu Yan really can only rely on the literate people among the Jin people. Took nearly 4 months, maybe it was around March 341 AD? In the spring, Lu Yan returned to Chongguang County with nearly 30,000 people. They walked along the coast all the way behind, mainly to obtain food supplies from the sea. Tian Shuo and other Jin scholars, they are actually quite surprised that Lu Yan still owns a navy army. They don't even know that it is not a navy army. They are just some NPC fishing boats that Lu Yan developed to fish by using the system. Speaking of it, Liu Yan was not hesitating to take the people back. Nearly 30,000 people ate most of the food that Liu Yan had accumulated with difficulty, not to mention that at least 3 of the food that Liu Yan finally accumulated was lost due to accidents. 10 fishing boats. Chongguang County, Hanjianan was first set up. Governance was in Chongguang, present-day Lakesea City, Shandong, and was abandoned. In the 3rd year of Jin Xianing, 277 AD, it was restored, but the government was not in the right place, now north of Lishan County. It has jurisdiction over the counties of Qingdao, Lishan, Lakesea, Hyang, Jimo, Luoyang and other counties in Shandong. The Northern Wei dynasty moved to rule Jiaodong City, now Pingdu, the Northern Qi dynasty moved to rule Huang County, now Shandong, and it was abandoned in the early Sui dynasty. Of course, Liu Yan didn't know the above-mentioned history of Chongguang County. If it hadn't taken in some local Jin people, he didn't even know where he had traveled. Like many counties, they may have a history of one kind or another, and now they are mostly a bird's hair, all of which are vast and sparsely populated. Back in Chongguang County, the team was still walking along the coastline. There was no welcome on their return. Some Liu Yan heard the return, saying that it was a De tribe surnamed Su who gathered more than 200 people in front of him, saying yes. All the bills are calculated together. Now this year, the De people are more like the Orthodox Central Plains people than some Chinese descent. To put it simply, part of the De ethnic group has been completely Sinicized. On the contrary, the Jin people have lost their original living habits because of the precarious relationship. If you don't pay attention to the distinction, you won't be able to recognize whether most people are from the De ethnic group or from the Jin. The De people of Su's surname is a fully Sinicized family. His family is a big family in Gaixian County, Chongguang County. Liu Yan's base is only 30 kilometers away from Gaixian County. At first, the friction was frequent, and the two sides showed their strengths. It seems that no one can do anything about it, and it is considered peaceful coexistence. Chongguang County is a county, but according to Liu Yan's long-term investigation, the population of the county is at most 50,000 or 60,000, and the population is very scattered. The most populous is the capital of the county, but the city. Chongguang County is not small, but there are only 50,000 to 60,000 people. You can imagine how barren it is. Among them, there are less than 500 people of the Ji people. Most of the Ji people are concentrated in the county towns, De people and Qiang people. There are probably nearly 10,000 Huns, and the rest are all Jin people. Liu Yan looked at the huge team and frowned. Too much movement. It's not that the Huron found this huge team along the way. It was just sent by Liu Yan in various ways. Now it is getting closer and closer to the resettlement site. What if it can be sent? Since the movement is so big, just make it bigger. Thinking about it, Liu Yan ordered the system units in the base to gather troops and bring some necessary supplies in his mind. The fact is that there are a lot of people, but Su Ming didn't expect that he would block up an endless team. It was actually stupid when he saw that Ye was full of people. He observed it carefully, and before observing a trick, the huge team stopped, and then a team of about 200 people slowly approached them. All the 200 people were wearing scarlet battle robes. The swordsmen were equipped with tie armor, and the rest were not equipped with armor, but everyone had a weapon in hand. When they stepped, they were very neat, basically raising their legs at the same time and stepping on the ground at the same time. The rhythmic sound of moving and hitting times made more than 200 people out of the power of thousands. In fact, the infantry produced by Liu Yan from the system are all tuned, and they can walk in a square formation without training, which is comparable to the clones used in the parade in the heavens and the dynasty. A uniform. All soldiers have weapons at their disposal. In the period of the 16 kingdoms in the Eastern Jin dynasty, such a unit could be regarded as a super luxurious armed force, and anyone who saw it would be shocked. Su Ming was frightened, and he thought to himself, no, I haven't seen him for only 4 months. How can the man with the surname Lu have such an elite level? In fact, when Lu Yan first confronted Su Ming, it would have been as shabby as it was. In the Dark Ages, he wasted a lot of development time in order to pretend to produce barbarians, or it should be better now. It must be noted that Lu Yan's golden finger, that is, the upper limit of the population of Age of Empires II Conqueror is 500. He currently has 50 farmers, 20 scout cavalry, 60 swordsmen, and 200 long soldiers. Spearmen, 80 archers. The sharp sword hanging on Lu Yan's head is the population limit of 500. If Golden Finger can only produce 500 population units, it will undoubtedly become the biggest failure. Another flaw also exists, that is, as long as other traversers have a system, they will be matched with a beautiful guiding elf or something. His system claims to be I am underneath, and there is a strong 1.0.0.8.6. Fan Er didn't answer any questions, he had to explore everything by himself. Must be more than 500 population cap, or Lu Yan really has no fun. He guessed that he did not touch the threshold. For example, he had to upgrade from the Dark Age to the Feudal Age when he had to kill 2 wild boars. Lu Yan himself guessed that there must be tasks to upgrade from the Feudal era to the Castle era. Then there must be an increase in the population limit, but the threshold has not been touched for the time being. When Lu Yan produces system units, he needs the same resources as in the game, but he develops related upgrade technologies, such as upgrading barbarians to swordsmen, and scientific research in the forge. The resources needed are different from those in the game. It ranges from 100 times to 100 times, and the required resources become more complex as the level of scientific research increases. In some games, there is basically a setting of the force value. Lu Yan can check his own force value, and then he can also check the force value of both the enemy and the enemy. In some of the units he produced, the strength of the spearmen was mostly between 45 and 50, the archers were between 35 and 40, the scouts were between 50 and 55, and the swordsmen were between 55 and 60. In fact, a force value of over 40 is already very good. Lu Yan just caught a Jin person to see. The force value is 20-30 everywhere. That is because the Jin people are too thin. The Huron he had contacted basically had a force value of more than 40, and some of them even had a strength of around 75. There are also differences in resources. For example, 1 caddy of grain is 2 units of food, 3 caddies of wild fruit is 1 unit of food, 1 caddy of meat is 10 units of food, and 1 caddy of fish is 8 units of food. He guessed that it might be related to the nutrition of the food is related, the more the nutrition, the more units are exchanged. In terms of other resources, 1 cubic meter of wood is equal to 100 units, 1 caddy of gold is equal to 250 units, 1 unit of stone is equal to 10 cubic meters, and so on. There are many differences. The stranger one is Lu. After Yan upgraded from the Dark Age to the Feudal Age, the system resources also added a piece of iron. And there is no iron resource unit in the game. There is something even more weird. I don't know if there are gold mines in this area of Qingdao, but it is certain that there are no exposed gold mines. However, Lu Yan just found the exposed gold mines, including high-quality quarries. It can only be said that the system is very against the sky. The system was against the sky and even changed part of the topography. A valley with a radius of about 5 kilometers appeared near Jiaozhou Bay. The valley was surrounded by 2 mountains, leaving only one exit. The internal springs flowed down into a stream, and the exit was a large area of dense forest, and not far from it is the ocean. Inside the valley is Lu Yan's town center, including the things he developed, but the Jin people who are admitted are arranged in another place. After all, for him, there is nothing more important than guaranteeing all the sources of gold fingers, that is, the safety of the town center. After Lu Yan brought people up, he stared with Su Ming's small eyes, one with curiosity and the other with curiosity. Su Ming, what do you mean by leading people to block the road? Lu, where did you get so many people? Spoke at almost the same time, and both closed their mouths, and the scene fell silent for a while. I have signed a contract, and I am sending the contract. So before the contract status is changed, every day is one chapter, and when there is a recommended position, there will be 2-3 chapters every day. You reading book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to read. Lu Yan and Su Ming are not the kind of life and death enemies. What Su Ming thinks of Lu Yan is not clear. Lu Yan sees Su Ming with a relatively complicated psychology. The 5 Hus of Chaos Hua are the Ji, Di, Qiang, Xianbei, and Xiangnu. Among them, the Ji tribe is the current ruling class in the Central Plains, and the total population will never exceed 500,000. Qiang people are not the Qiang people of later generations. The Qiang people in the pre-Qin period in ancient times specifically referred to some sheep herders, so they did not specifically refer to a certain ethnic group, but actually referred to a group with similar living habits. Xianbei came from the north of Liaodong. They were originally part of Donghu. Later, Donghu was defeated and partly annexed by Xiangnu Shanyu Madun. The Xianbei fled to the vicinity of the Arctic Circle. At the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty, Xianbei went south again, defeated the Karasuma people entrenched to the north of Liaodong, and annexed the Karasuma people to become the regional overlord of Liaodong. Of course, the Huns refer to the group of Huns who took refuge in the Han clan, but some historical materials show that the Huns in the Western Jin dynasty did not simply refer to the southern Huns who took refuge in the Han clan. Some of the northern Huns returned to the east and unified the internal migration. The southern Huns and some miscellaneous Hussii launched an offensive against the Jin dynasty. The Di ethnic group is not the Badi ethnic group. It is difficult to say exactly how this ethnic group emerged. It is more reasonable that the Di ethnic group split from the Qiang people. Now in the Central Plains, apart from the Ji, Di, Qiang, Xianbei, and Xiangnu groups, there are actually far more Zhou groups than these 5 groups. It's just that Zhou is dependent on the big clans, and their sense of existence appears so low. Su Ming once again looked at the people in the mountains and plains, already planning to go bugging in his heart. Lu Yan on the other side was also thinking about what to do. He saw that at least half of Su Ming's 200 people were riding horses. It was obviously very difficult to destroy such a team. The distance between the two of them is not too far. You can see the expression on each other's face, as well as the eyes of both parties. Su Ming clearly noticed the fierce light flashing in Lu Yan's eyes from time to time. He roared, "I was going to come to you to settle accounts. I saw your tribe grow and grow. I changed my mind." Roaring, he was also fighting. The gesture made the people under him prepare to retreat, while shouting again, "If you can survive this time, we will be friends." Lu Yan twitched the corner of his mouth as a smile, but the alarm bell rang wildly in his mind. He asked, "Who wants to hit my idea?" Su Ming, who noticed that there seemed to be some movement on the left and right sides, had led people to slowly retreat, and while retreating, he observed Lu Yan and saw that Lu Yan was not chasing after him. He replied, "Who else is there? Think about what's inside the city. People don't know." Although there are too many people in the city, Lu Yan understood Su Ming's words, and he said loudly, "I don't care if you are blocking the road this time. If I can survive this time, I will also take you. Be a friend." Su Ming smiled heartily, and roared, "That's it." After roaring, he turned the horse's head and urged the horse to leave. 200 people turned around and left, and some people appeared on the left and right wings. They were some Shangzi people led by Lu Tai and Su Zheng. In fact, there are not many people, just to create an illusion of surrounding Su Ming and his gang, forcing Su Ming to take people out, instead of choosing to fight. "You are really a good military strategy." Tian Chuo first flattered, and then asked worriedly, "That person said, someone will attack. Lu Yan is busy cancelling the previous command in the game interface in his mind, which seems to be thoughtful to others. After a short while, Lu Tai and Su Zhang also came over. They reported that the team was reunited again and requested instructions for the next step. Take people on the road. Lu Yangxian finished speaking to Lu Tai and Su Zhang, and finally looked at Tianchuo, who was still waiting for an answer, and said, "There are only 500 G people in Chongguang County, but all races in the county will listen to G. The dispatch of the tribe. Depending on the situation, those G tribes in Bukitcheng have already discovered us, and it is estimated that they will take action." Tianchuo's face turned pale in an instant. He had been an official for the G people. He knew too much about the nature of the G people. He didn't care about production and grabbed whatever he lacked. He often lived by cutting wool. He muttered how to be good, and turned his head in the circle for a while, and when he looked up again to say something, Lu Yan had already left. There are some things that can't be solved by worry alone. With that kung fu worry, Lu Yan might as well take back the people who have been collected from everywhere. Then, he was preparing to send out manpower to inquire around while preparing for the battle, to figure out what the situation was in order to be able to deal with it in a targeted manner. The current Jin people are really too weak and timid. Su Ming is just more than 200 people to block the road. Most of the 30,000 Jin people are frightened and panicked. Those who are not panicked are not courageous, at all. It's the appearance of resignation. Su Ming led the people away. The Jin people did not cheer. They were informed to continue on their way, silently observing the assignment. When they looked at Lu Yan, they were more afraid and numb, and couldn't see the emotion of gratitude. For the Jin people these years, what environment do they live in to make a living person like this? It has been proved to be a relatively difficult task to choose the source of troops from among the Jin people. It is not that training is impossible, but when the Jin people face the Hu people, they will be timid before doing anything. The more than 100 Jin soldiers in Lu Yan's hands were after more than 3 months of special training, that is, with absolute superiority, he led the systematic soldiers to lead the battle, and the Jin soldiers defeated the Hu people again and again. Is to make the Jin soldiers a little courageous when facing the Hu people. To put it bluntly, as a nation, Jin people in the Central Plains and the North, except for a very small number of groups, the courage and confidence of most Jin people have basically been wiped out in one suffering after another. If a person lacks the courage and self-confidence, he is basically like a waste, and the damage is limited to the individual or his family. If a nation loses its courage and self-confidence, a small number of enemies can be slaughtered, which is even easier to kill than pigs and sheep. At least it is difficult for pigs and sheep to drive away, but people can be driven away, even if they dig a hole to walk in, then dig the soil and bury them all alive. The nation has lost its courage and self-confidence. Looking at the Jin people in the Central Plains and the North, you will know what it looks like. As the lowest nation, they are often abused, killed, and eaten. To put it in a very extreme way, if you don't die in the resistance, you will die in a shame, you are all asking for it. Lu Yan, for the current Jin people, is actually a mentality of sorrowing their misfortunes and angering them. In many cases, don't think how kind he can treat this group of comrades. It can even be said that when he was so angry that he couldn't help it, in addition to not killing people, he did many things like punches, kicks, whips, and sticks. Treating like that, the Jin people still feel that Lu Yan is extremely benevolent because Lu Yan at least feeds, drinks, does not kill, and then works hard, just don't want to train too many soldiers on the battlefield. Correct. Because the times are in constant wars, most of the Jin people don't even want to have a dress. Most of them have cloth or leaves for a little shame. They are all naked and even naked. In fact, it is not only the Jin people, but the miscellaneous Hus among the Hu people are in the same situation. Only some Hu people who are better mixed can wear a complete suit. Took 30,000 people, maybe not, no matter what, Lu Yan returned to the resettlement place. The so-called resettlement site is a site close to the sea. It was originally in an absolutely desolate environment. After almost a year of development, it was considered a bit civilized. The topography of the resettlement site is not that complicated. It can be regarded as a flat topography. However, even on the flat topography, there are many grasses taller than people everywhere, and there are a lot of woods. Lu Yan's protective measure for the resettlement site is to choose to build a fence, enclose the entire resettlement site with a long fence, and then build a watchtower, which can also serve as an arrow tower. According to his idea, he wanted to wait for the upgrade to the feudal era to build the city wall, but later discovered that it was a big project to build the city wall and lacked sufficient resources. Before Lu Yan wandered around, there were more than 2,000 jinns in the resettlement site. This time, I didn't know what kind of impact it would cause to bring back 30,000. UU reading www.udgonshu.com. The resettlement site is not in the same place as Lu Yan's basic town center. In fact, the resettlement site is chosen to be in the valley where the center of the town is guarded. If you want to enter the valley, you must break through the resettlement site. The other way is to climb steeply. Mountain. When they saw the long fence, the jinn people who accompanied them were basically relieved. When they were led to a place where they could be set aside, they saw some jinn people waiting for hot food, and many people immediately burst into tears. Reason for crying is relatively simple, that is, seeing the same jinn people seem to be doing well, at least his face is ruddy, and his body is not bruised. It must be clear that most jinn people in the Central Plains and the North are in a more difficult situation than the wild beasts. They are still lighter when they beat or scold them. Many of them are often bruised. Those jinn people who were in charge of welcoming them looked a little cautious, but they were not bloody, and their faces were ruddy. To be in this state, everyone wants to come. The new owner, Lu Yan, should be a benevolent talent. Right? Naturally, Lu Yan didn't lead people to rush inside. He asked everyone to line up. Before queuing to enter, he had to wash in a stream next to him. After washing, he could receive a bowl of porridge and a number plate and enter the resettlement. Some people will also arrange habitats in the land. Take everything down carefully. The number plate is your status symbol, and it is related to your daily life and safety in the future. Tian Chuo's fight for this task of informing Wanman naturally has a small abacus in his mind. He yelled hard, "People with families, remember to do a special registration. UU Reading Book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to read. The fence in the camp is long for dozens of miles. It was built in the original settlement, but the wild beasts attacked too frequently. Every day, jinn people died under the attack of the wild beasts, forcing Lu Yan to gather everyone together. Cutting down wood wastes a lot of early development time in order to build fences. Lu Yan discovered a special phenomenon in a series of developments, that is, farmers who produce systematically are not good at IQ. However, apart from worrying about their IQ and being unable to participate in combat, they seem to be so omnipotent from doing various tasks to carrying out various constructions. In fact, the farmers produced by the system are really amazing. They work hard without complaining, and they can do all kinds of jobs. Lu Yan jokingly called them super farmers. There are a lot of wooden houses in the resettlement area, arranged in a regular row. Each house can provide 20 people to live. The houses are arranged in different directions. If you take a bird's-eye view from a high altitude, you can see that they are in the form of a gossip-like guard. Numerous rows of houses guard the middle area. In the middle is a large public place. Apart from a large area, there is also a seemingly large canteen to provide people with daily meals. From the outside, the cafeteria is really big, not only big in a pure sense, but also relatively tall. There is only one purpose for such a large building, that is, the big pot of rice needs to be eaten together, and it can only be built bigger. In fact, there are also open-air dining places outside. The space inside is for system figures, some administrative management and military officers, and the outside is for ordinary Jinn people. This is a differentiated treatment in management, and it can play a bigger role in managing a collective than imagined. It's actually quite difficult to build a power. It's not something that can be done by an individual. Lu Yan is too aware of how difficult it is to restore a strong man, and he can only do his best. Fortunately, he at least has gold fingers. The system Lu Yan obtained is very magical. The magic is not only embodied in the ability to change alive, but also involves a kind of spatial transmission. He currently owns a town center. From the outside, the town center is probably a building covering an area of more than 200 square meters. It looks like an unremarkable thatched house, but there is a lot of information in it. From the outside, I looked at the town center with little space, and when I walked inside, I saw a vast and boundless space, and I couldn't see the end at a glance. At first, Liu Yang was shocked by this discovery, and he was suddenly surprised when he thought about it later. After all, this game of Age of Empires has puzzling places, such as the fact that the town center can store unlimited resources. Liu Yan saw the vast space and immediately understood that that is why the town center can store unlimited resources. In fact, the internal space in the town center is limited. That is, Liu Yan sent a scout cavalry to continuously ride horses. After investigating this square space, its space is about 50 kilometers in radius. The most amazing thing is, when things are stored in the center of town, there is never need to worry about deterioration or mold. It is so amazing that it comes with unparalleled preservation measures. Liu Yan also discovered a magical place in the back. There is an unexplainable spatial link between the town center and the built timber warehouses, mineral warehouses, and mills. If resources are stored in warehouses or mills, they will be automatically transported to the town center. Of course, there must be restrictions on transmission. For example, the timber can only be transported when it is placed in a timber warehouse, and other items cannot be placed. It is a pity that the spatial link seems to be a one-way transmission, and items stored in the center of the town cannot be taken out of the warehouse. The other embarrassing thing is that only Liu Yan himself and the system characters can enter the center of the town. Others will be crushed immediately when they enter. It is a true crush, and there will be no bones left. Liu Yan only ordered some people to arrange the new refugees properly. He rode on his horse with an eager mood, made a round circle to prevent being followed, and then rushed to the valley. When was out for a stroll, although Liu Yan was able to control the development, he only looked at some signs on the map. Human beings always need to see with their own eyes to be relieved. He belongs to this kind of person. From the resettlement site to the valley, not only need to walk through a flat open space, but also need to go to the seaside. Liu Yan wanted to go to the dock by the sea. After thinking about it or delaying it, he turned a short distance before getting into a forest. He needed to walk in the forest for at least 2 hours to reach the valley. There are several clear guards in the clearing. They are watchtowers built by Liu Yan, acting as an arrow tower. 2 archers have been on duty for a long time to provide Liu Yan with vision and necessary warning. Inside the forest, Liu Yan arranged a number of secret guards irregularly to prevent people from entering the forest by avoiding the observation tower in the open space, ensuring that there is a second warning, and further ensuring the safety of the valley. Before, in order to ensure that the valley was not exposed, Liu Yan chose to cut down the wood, but it took a lot of effort. He would rather take the farmers to drive far away to find the woods for felling, instead of choosing to start near the trees at the exit of the valley. When I got to the back, the woods by the sea were almost cut down, and I felt that it was necessary to clear a road that was easy to walk on, so as to start with the trees outside the valley. Liu Yan can inquire related resources in his mind. He has always wanted to plan development and production carefully, but he has a good plan repeatedly but has been disrupted. Just like this time, he just wants to reproduce some farmers to lay a better foundation for future development, but he learned from Su Ming that the Ji people in Bukitcheng will take action, forcing him to only increase the military unit. Because the system is currently in the feudal era, Liu Yan can actually produce not many military units. The most powerful unit is a swordsman with armor. The rest are scout cavalry, spearmen, and bow. Pawns and spear throwers are really not very good from attack to defense. There is a class of arms that must be mentioned in particular. Although the scout cavalry has the word cavalry, they are one of the most tasteless arms. Scout cavalry is very much like a type of unit specially used as scouts. It is really not good for them to carry out frontal combat. Besides, the breed of war horses is not very good and looks delicate. They only eat fine grains without eating grass, or 3. 4 people. Liu Yan produced a lot of military units. The most produced were the spearmen. If you count it seriously, the production quantity definitely exceeds 350, but why is there only more than 100 left? It's not that the soldiers produced by the system are too weak. What order Liu Yan gives is what order to complete, and he is not afraid of death when fighting. Cold weapon warfare is basically a situation in which you kill 1,000 enemies and lose 800. Unless your strength differs to the level of heaven and earth, you can't even think about winning without damage. Defeating death is not a purely commendatory term. Defying the fear of death in the fight represents a tough combat style. Under normal circumstances, the battle damage rate of troops who are not afraid of death is astonishingly high. Went through the woods and came to the valley. At a glance, the first thing I saw was a row of stone walls. The wall and the steep mountain were connected to one place. There was a city gate in the middle. No flags were planted on the walls, only a few groups of soldiers patrolled back and forth. After entering the city gate, what you saw was a flat space about 5 or 6 kilometers in range. There were many buildings in it, such as the town center, barracks, shooting range, stables, blacksmith shops, markets, and mills. The buildings of the system are now characteristic of thatched huts. That is the style created by the peasants of the system when they built it. It is not because of Liu Yan's obsessive-compulsive disorder. Speaking of a rather depressing past, Liu Yan was forced by food at the beginning. After building the mill, he pulled out the donkey and slaughtered it, thinking that it would be exchanged into the food unit of the system when he put it in the town center, but, the meat produced by the system, whether it is donkey meat, horse meat, and human meat cannot become food units anyway. Now the mill without a donkey is still standing in the valley. Compared to the croaking of donkeys and the sound of stone grinding from other mills from time to time, let alone how the quiet mill hit Liu Yan in the face. With a mill, how can there be a shortage of farmland? The farmland exchanged for system resources requires 60 lumber in the game, but on Liu Yan's side it becomes 35 lumber and 15 grain. In fact, when he played the game of Age of Empires, he was puzzled for a long time. When farming is farming, he is using wood for farmland. Shouldn't he need seeds? When the game became a reality, Liu Yan's bewilderment became retribution. Seeing that even the donkey of the mill was pulled out and killed, he knew what the lack of food was. They went out for nearly 4 months. When they went out, they brought nearly 500 soldiers, including Jin soldiers. When they came back, there were only more than 300 left. Among them, the spearmen and archers suffered the most losses. The spearmen, 89 people were killed, 29 people were killed by archers. In fact, 10 scout cavalry were brought out. Only 2 of Ukenshu.com came back alive, but none of the swordsmen died. Jin people lost 46 people. The changes in the valleys made Liu Yan a little unrecognizable when he came back. After seeing it with his own eyes, he realized that the building built later was a bit planning error, which squeezed the available arable land of the farmland. It's time to expand the system things, such as farmland and military buildings. In addition, let me take a closer look at the resources. Next, I may need to deal with the big scene, so I should carefully consider what kind of units should be produced. The picture in Lu Yan's mind shows 12,579 wood, 35,200 food, 1,205 gold, 2,430 stone, 1,400 iron. According to these resources, upgrading from the feudal age to the castle age is actually enough, but Lu Yan has built all the buildings that should be built, but the pattern of the upgraded era is still grey, so he can only do it in a hurry. Lu Yan took a lot of effort to check the units he produced. This cannot be seen from the system page. He can only rely on the notes he made before. At first glance, there are 50 farmers, 12 scout cavalry, 60 swordsmen, 131 spearmen, 61 archers. He is also not sure whether the data is correct or not. Swordsman production requires 60 units of food and 20 units of gold. It is a bit more expensive, but the actual combat effect is much better than the other ones. By the way, the production time of different units is actually different, so Lu Yan should really think quickly, otherwise it will be too late if the G people are really killed. Dear friends, please vote for some recommendations. You reading book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to read. Yes, Lu Yan has golden fingers, and there are many things he hasn't found out yet. It can be seen how resentful there is for not having a grandfather or a beautiful girl elves, and he is actually slowly groping for the system. With the golden finger, Lu Yan naturally felt extremely excited and exhilarated. After groping, he has learned more things, such as the production of systematic biological units and the construction of buildings. When producing systemic biological units, different types require varying amounts of time. For example, it takes 2 hours to produce a farmer, 1 hour and 45 minutes to produce a spearman, but 3 hours to produce a swordsman. In the rest of the feudal era the period can be an hour and a half for the production of archers and spear throwers. The biological production time is destined to be a little bit. Since it is impossible to produce units immediately, Lu Yan can only be cautious and cautious. It is necessary to detect and spy on the surrounding movement in advance. Sad reminded. The construction of buildings is of course also very often, and the construction time of different buildings is not consistent. Usually, the living buildings are relatively short. Military buildings and large-scale buildings take longer, but one thing is fixed. That is, the more labor involved in the construction. The faster the construction speed. 12,579 wood, 35,200 food, 1,205 gold, 2,430 stone, 1,400 iron. It looks like a lot, but it's really not too much. The consumption of construction is much faster than accumulation. Only when construction is stopped will resources accumulate rapidly, but food is consumed all the time. Damn it, come back again, the biggest problem is food. Speaking of food, the farmland constructed by the system is a magical product. They can be harvested 3 times a year and the output is relatively fixed. 1 mu of land can produce about 650 to 700 caddies of wheat or rice, but only these 2 grains. Now Lu Yan owns 200 acres of farmland, and a farmer is serving 10 acres, so there are number 20 farmers. Other farmers are distributed in logging, quarrying and gold mining. Most of the food Lu Yan has accumulated for half a year is now in the stomachs of the Jin people who have collected them. The remaining 35,200 units of food is only enough for 5 days, and he has to waste the original not much. The system's population limit is used to produce fishing boats. After 7 days, the grain should be harvested, and then 130,000 caddies of grain will be produced. According to the calculation unit of the Han dynasty, 130,000 jin is 5,000 shi. To increase the number of farmland, in this way, farmers who are already lacking will become even more lacking. It is necessary to mobilize the Shangzi people in the resettlement area to join the mass production. After inspecting a circle, Lu Yan began to think about whether to add military buildings. It takes time to produce biological units. He really doesn't know when the G people in the city will move. Besides, there is also a giant in Golden Finger Pit, since it has a population limit of 500, he is so worried that his hair is grey. It's not that Lu Yan didn't think about letting the Jin people farm. He had done so long before he left. After returning, he has already got the answer. System farmers can only plant grains 3 times a year, and Jin people can only plant 1 crop a year. For the same seeds, the farmland taken care of by the systematic farmers can produce 650 to 700 kilograms, and the Jin people can produce 150 kilograms per mu of farmland, even if it's burning high incense. I really don't know if the system farmers are too good, or the Jin people can't even farm. After reading the things in the valley, Lu Yan went to the dock by the sea again. Now that the dock can produce fishing boats, no warships can be produced. Fortunately, there are abundant fishery products near Jiaozhou Bay. The remaining 27 fishing boats can contribute at least about 10,000 food units per day, which is about 1,100 catties. Fish. After the inspection, Lu Yan came to the resettlement site. As soon as he entered, it didn't take long before he didn't know how Tianchuo knew that someone was coming, and he actually ran over. Mr. Lord, most of the refugees have already received the number plates. The houses are basically distributed. Tianchuo looked pleased, and said, according to the Lord's instructions, those who have a family can allocate houses separately, and a total of 621 rooms will be allocated. In other words, among the nearly 30,000 refugees, only 621 families have relatives, and the rest are all in one person. Tianchuo's report is still going on. He said, when the number plate was issued, statistics were made on gender and age. He took out a wooden calf and glanced at it, and said, there are 4,718 men between the ages of 14 and 20. 290 women, 17,784 men and 2,471 women between the ages of 20 and 30, 1,781 men and 140 women over the age of 30. A total of 27,184 people. 27,184 people? If you add the 2,017 people previously taken in by Lu Yan, it will be 29,201 people. Along the way, they have been gathering people, but because they were too weak, there were still many who were on the road or left behind. Among the more than 20,000 people brought back, there were only 2,901 pitiful women. Looking at the distribution of age, there is no one younger than 14 years old, and the oldest is 47 years old. Wooden calf is actually a wooden board for writing. Paper appeared in the Eastern Han Dynasty, but it took until the Song Dynasty to be considered popular. Before the Song Dynasty, even the so-called prosperous Tang could not make paper popular. In fact, although Li Tang was known as the prosperous Tang, but until its demise, Li Tang failed to reach the height of Yang Jian's rule in the Sui Dynasty. It was the population, territory, and economy that Li Tang lost to the Sui Dynasty under Yang Jian's rule. Only culturally, it caught up with and surpassed. Interested book friends can refer to the relevant data of De Sui and De Tang on Baidu. The original intention of sending the number plate has been reflected. The strict registration system allows Lu Yan to know exactly how many Jins he has under his hands. Knowing that he has gathered those refugees does not mean that the refugees belong to him. Looking at the map of Lu Yan's system interface, it can be understood that the situation shown on the map is that all activities in the valley are green dots. Although there are green dots on the resettlement site, the white dots representing neutrality account for the vast majority. Those white spots mean that although they were taken in, they were not considered to be members of Lu Yan's side. With green dots and white dots, there are also red dots. Those red dots are obviously hostile or hostile people. If there is no excuse, it will cause panic. Lu Yan has long wanted to remove those red dots. Is it unbelievable that there will be hostility when being taken in? It would be too simple to see the world if you think so. You must know that there are also types of refugees. For example, the 47-year-old older person is a more prestigious person in the original village, but after being taken in by Liu Yan, he loses the slightest authority. Some other people, they may have a lot of power. With Liu Yan's strong take-in, they dare not resist, but they can't say that there is no resentment in their hearts. Liu Yan's approach was to spread the red dots during the resettlement, and then send the attached Jin people to monitor. Time flies relatively quickly, Liu Yan's accumulated resources are consumed quickly, and resources accumulate quickly. Food is consumed fast. After all, one more mouth consumes one more food. The more people eat, the more food they eat. The rapid increase of wood and stone materials is at least 5 times slower than that of system farmers in resource collection by Jin people, but they can't be raised for nothing. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com can always ask them to raise them for work. 2 meals in the morning and evening are provided. Although the food is all kanji, for the Jin people, the Central Plains is full of hostility. There is a safe place to live, and there is nothing to eat without being beaten or abused for no reason. People who have not experienced war and long-term abuse can never imagine what a paradise life should be. As a result, Liu Yan showed more and more green dots on the map, which made him extremely satisfied. About half a month after returning to the territory, the people sent by Liu Yan sent back news that the world is still chaotic. Husbands kill Jin people, and Jin people flee to survive. The whole Zhao seems to have nothing but chaos. In the chaotic situation, something big happened in Bukacheng, which Liu Yan was more concerned about. The Ji people there did act. Together with the Hu people in the city, the Ji people arrested the Jin people and killed a batch of jerky producers. Another group of two-legged sheep was raised in captivity. Then, the Ji people also called friends everywhere to gather ordnance and supplies. Everything is showing preparations for military conquest. What? I caught more than 2,000 Jin girls, day and night lewd, kill a few if you want to eat, cook and eat. Liu Yan's eyes instantly turned red when he heard it. There was sadness and anger and fire. In fact, if the same race is killed, it will be angry and angry, but the killing of a girl of the same race makes the man feel compassion and angry. Really, there is nothing more maddening than hearing or knowing that a woman of her own race is being raped by a foreign race. Fornication and torture. Sincerely ask for recommendation tickets and collections, thanks. P.S. Please post and reply wisely. Yu reading book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in Yu reading. For mobile phone users, please go to Read. Break. Must be rioters. Women belonging to the ethnic group are being raped day and night. They are often killed, boiled and eaten. If they are a little bit bloody, they must be born to kill the thief. However, Liu Yan can't help but get upset when he sees the 321/500 population on the system page. On the brow, he felt a sense of sadness of the intention to kill the thief, but the powerless to return to heaven. The system needs to build houses to increase the population. The houses built by Liu Yan are definitely more than 500 people, but it shows that the upper limit of the population that can be produced has stopped at 500. It is precisely because of this that Liu Yan thinks that the golden finger is flawed, and it is a very big flaw. Shows that the number of Jins who have taken refuge is more beautiful. The green number of 16,879 in a row is pleasing to the eye. Those are the people who have become leaders of Liu Yan, which is the green dot shown on the map, but there are also 12,322 people who have not yet become leaders. Therefore, it is not that Liu Yan brings people back and it is finished, but it is necessary to make those people recognize Liu Yan's dominance in their hearts. Bukacheng is only 70 kilometers away from Liu Yan's occupation from the flat map, but the flat map is a straight line, and it is definitely more than 70 miles to walk. The closest county to Liu Yan is Gui County, and the largest family in Gui County is 30 kilometers away from the Su family of D ethnic group. The Ji people are already preparing for war. Taking into account the current unfast-paced habit of life, it will take 2 to 3 months for them to start operations sooner or later. Then it will be the summer before they can take real action. Your Majesty, we finally established a stronghold. When they come, even if we repel the offending enemy, it will inevitably cause destruction. Lu Tai looked worried, endured, and suggested, no, if we take the initiative to attack and kill them by surprise. Even if we fail, we can delay the time and wait for the recruits to be trained, and the defensive warfare can be followed. How can it be done? Tian Shuo immediately lost his hair and said excitedly, our combined strength is no more than 1,500. Although there are nearly 300 of them absolutely elite, the enemy will not be less than 5,000. Take the initiative. If the battle is defeated, he turned pale as he said, and looked at Lu Yan, fearing that the king who had just worked out would be angry. There are not as many as 300. The exact number is 12 scout cavalry, 60 swordsmen, 111 spearmen, 51 archer, and together there are 234 system soldiers. LV Tai, Tianchuo, and others don't know what system, only that the soldiers are armed by Lu Yan's tribe. After some investigation, the various races and hustle people gathered by the Ji people will indeed not be less than 5,000 after the confluence, and the number may be even more at that time. After all, the Ji people are now the overlord of the Central Plains, and there is a natural advantage in convening the hustle. Lu Yan originally wanted to violently fight, but later he held back. Even if he had sufficient resources and violent soldiers, he could only burst out 179 swordsmen. It can be said that there is no absolute influence in the battle. Moreover, because of the cessation of gold mining, the gold unit is also in a state of insufficient. He was thinking of a tactic, which was to use the golden fingers advantage to determine the victory or defeat of this war, but the premise was that the Jin soldiers who needed to be recruited played some auxiliary roles. With a preliminary strategy, Liu Yangguang sent scouts to investigate the terrain around Buki City. Next, what Liu Yan did was to arrange the division of labor and transfer the timber cutting system farmers to mainly mine gold mines, and all the timber felling work was transferred to the Jin people who took in. In terms of food, Tianchuo has been a prefect of a county anyway, and has enough experience in commanding people to open up farmland, but in Liu Yan's view, it is still too slow. It takes only 10 days for a systematic farmer to reclaim 10 acres of farmland, but it takes at least 1 month for 10 acres of farmland to be reclaimed by nearly 50 Jin people. The work efficiency is simply one sky and one underground, except for the system once again. The super efficiency of farmers also shows the inefficiency of Jin people. As a last resort, Liu Yan tried to cultivate by the systematic farmers and then transferred it to the Jin people, but something strange happened. The cultivated farmland could be handed over to the Jin people, but soon the farmland would grow wildly with grass growing faster than that. Clean up fast. Is this a restriction? Liu Yan was going crazy. He thought he had found a way to cheat, but he was wasting time. Your Majesty. Su Zheng didn't know how far he had ran. He appeared panting, and said, North, the enemy has been found in the north. Liu Yan's energy has always been involved in construction. He didn't check the map in his mind without hearing the alarm of the attack. After listening to the conditioned reflex, he checked the map and looked for a while before he saw 2 red dots. Su Zheng stood still and took a break. At last he was not so panting. The problem was that he didn't understand why Liu Yan didn't ask the situation. Instead, he stood still and wondered what he was doing. He couldn't help but call out, Master! Call up people! Liu Yan probably knows how many people there are, but I can't see more information from the map, follow me. Su Zhenji lying, no. Liu Yan has gold fingers, but in many ways he is not omnipotent. For example, he can use the map, but it seems that what he sees now is only 2 red dots moving, and he cannot tell which race or force he belongs to. In addition, once there is no medium to provide vision, the map will once again fall into the fog of war mode. There are two moving red dots. The majority is chased by the minority. If the direction does not change, it will definitely hit Lu Yan's settlement in 2 hours. Su Zheng quickly assembled the people in the department. They were nearly 200 Jin people, all of whom were veterans who had been chasing Lu Yan for 4 months. When they were gathering, Lu Yan had already led the system soldiers to set off, and had to follow in a hurry. The sparse population in the Central Plains has led to the desolation of all places in this year. There are weeds higher than people everywhere, and there is basically no half of the road. Therefore, if you want to hurry, you have to push and trample to get out. Come one way. Lu Yan assembled 50 swordsmen, 80 spearmen, and 50 archers. They stopped when they moved about 3 kilometers north. Because the environment is too complicated and the field of vision is too severely restricted, it is difficult to see with the naked eye even if they know that someone is ahead. Ordinary people can only listen to movement with their ears, but Lu Yan can observe from the map in his mind and lead the troops. Take a cat into the grass, arrange it in a good formation, just wait for the opponent to hit it by itself. He has always understood that if the map in his mind is used properly, it will undoubtedly be the most heaven-defying golden finger. Su Zheng brought people from behind and was arranged to assist. He also knew that compared with Lu Yan's elite soldiers, the soldiers who had been trained for less than a year were weaker and less courageous. He could only enviously watch those elite soldiers who ordered and banned and sighed inwardly, thinking that he would definitely have to hold his hands. The soldiers drilled hard again. There are about 20 red dots in the small stock, and there are nearly 100 red dots in the pursuit. The same thing is that they all rode across the horse. The sound of rumbling horses' hoofs can travel far in the wilderness, and there are occasional horses' hiss and screams, and they move very fast. Coming. Riding on a war horse, the body can be exposed from the grass, and the two groups of people are actually dressed in the same way. They are mainly dressed in animal skins and sheepskin jackets, and only a few are wearing linen clothes. The gang being chased was a young girl who rode a horse in front of him, and the remaining 20 people seemed to be protecting her. The people who were chasing and killing were shouting. Lu Yan thought a little bit. The one being chased was Tuobashiu, who seemed to be Tuobazian Bey's princess or something. The people who chased them were like the Huns. Taifu? In fact, a certain Han person becomes the son-in-law of a certain foreign race, and then this Han person has his own tribe or tribe. Who people generally call this kind of force the Taifu tribe. It's getting closer, Lu Yan focused all of his attention on the map. After groping for so long, he could see the ruler from the map. He thought the time had come, and shouted, "Fall arrows!" Is just an instruction in the mind of the system soldiers. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. The problem is that Lu Yan also brought Jin soldiers, that one must be a shout. Nearly 100 feather arrows left the strings in the sound of the bowstrings. They whizzed and flew into the air. After the first wave, there was the second wave, and several waves continued. When the first wave of arrows appeared from the bushes, Tuobashiu was taken aback, and then feared in his heart, and hurriedly rode his horse to make an escape posture. There is no stirrup in this era. Even the Huron who grew up on horseback since he was a child, faced a sudden pull on the reins to change the course of the horse. Inevitable. The Tuobazian Bey who ran in the forefront had fallen off 4 of them in their 20s. The remaining 13 riders tripped and only 6 riders continued to gallop, but soon they had to stop. It is not just Tuobazian Bey. The other group of Huron who are going forward at a speed of about 10 meters per second is also the same. The difference is that the number of human in the latter group is larger, and the number of arrows falling is naturally more. After a while, people turned their backs on their horses, people snorted and the horses neighed, and the grass instantly became lively. Who people are mostly shouting ambush in the middle, while some people are asking how many enemy troops are. The situation at the scene is very chaotic. In the chaos, the overall sound of stepping appeared, because the sound of the steps was really too consistent. causing all the nonchalance to quiet down. Everyone turned to look in the direction of the sound source, and seemed to be able to feel the grass constantly being flat push, a strong threat is approaching. A voice sounded abruptly, and he was shouting, Han Army Assault! You reading book friends are welcome to visit and read, the latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to read. Han Army? The great Han had already perished in 220 AD, so where is the Han Army? Speaking of the Han Army, it was also the country of Han established by the Hun, Lu Yuan. A violent shout made those Tuabazian Bey's face appear astonished, and the people of the Hun Taifa were also taken aback. Tuabazian Bey was frightened, that was because their opponent was the power of the Huns. Spring is the season when everything recovers. Plants grow wildly, forming dense green shades. The sound of tidy and noisy footsteps was stomping, but unfortunately the surrounding weeds were rampant, and the line of sight was basically blocked. However, it was precisely because of the obstructed vision that not only was there movement in the front, but also the grass on the left and right sides was constantly being overthrown. The chaotic Tuabazian Bey and the Xiongnu Taifa people also experienced movement when they reacted. Let them subconsciously greet the staff to gather together, with the horses on the outside and the people on the inside, in order to protect themselves. The bushes were constantly overthrown. Tuabaxia was surrounded by the surviving subordinates. The complicated environment had made it difficult for people to observe. When surrounded by human shields, it was even harder to see. She had to repeatedly shout, "I am the sister of the acting country Lord Tuabashiajian." An identity like this can be a talisman. Lu Yan certainly heard it, but he didn't feel too special. Because they didn't get any order to change, the system lancers in the horizontal push did not stop at all. The 4-meter spears in their half-tilted hands kept advancing in silence. Tuabaxiu stared at the direction of the sound through the gap of the human wall, and could hear the footsteps getting closer. She didn't know if she had read it wrong. She saw a few brilliant lights appearing, and she waited to see clearly before knowing that it was the spear-tip weapon of a spear, and she subconsciously squatted down on the ground. The Xian Bey who protected Tuabaxiu kept shouting and roaring. When the spear emerged from the grass, the horses on the periphery were stabbed by the spears at the next moment, and the horses hissed from pain, and some of them froze and grasped. The hand of the rain ran away, and some of the horses that hadn't broken away stood up on the spot, with their front hoofs constantly stomping in the air. The horses that ran out rushed to the spear team on the side. The rigidity of the system soldiers was undoubtedly revealed at this moment. They did not do any evasion at all. They continued to advance in accordance with the order, and most of the horses that rushed ran into it. The spear and the horse fell in an instant, but several spearmen with weapons fell to the ground. Some of the horses that collided with the spearmen's main formation, they overwhelmed the people in the front row and disrupted the formation. Fortunately, the number was too small, and the soldiers were all from the system. Maybe it was dull or worrying about IQ. If they were overthrown, as long as they didn't die, can always get up again to keep up with the team. Su Zheng, who watched and responded, had a feeling that he was about to burn. Look! Look! The elite of the Lord, that is the elite of the Lord! Su Zheng instigated the robe, who looked blood-boiling, and yelled, "I dare not look at his back, but follow him." The system soldiers charged forward. The appearance of such a fierce and undaunted look would be shocked by anyone who saw it, but who knew that Lu Yan was both happy and helpless in his heart. IQ is the key. It may need to be upgraded to the castle age before the IQ of the NPC will become higher. Lu Yan, who was constantly shifting troops, was taken aback suddenly, and whispered Tuabazian Bey. He quickly let the soldiers who were about to collide with Tuabashiu bypass. Tuabazian Bey was not the Tuaba who founded the Northern Wei dynasty? And which emperor from Tuabazian Bey is here? It seems that he has implemented a comprehensive Sinicization that allows Han to become a nation and continue to have a glorious opportunity. Obviously, Liu Yangguang knew about the Northern Wei dynasty, but he didn't know the established dynasty. In fact, this dynasty is also very vigorous, but in the early stage, Murong Xianbei and Yuan Xianbei joined forces. However, after Yuan Xianbei finished the pit, Tuoba Xianbei himself fell into the big pit, and was directly destroyed by Murong Xianbei. Yuan Xianbei split into Khitan and Qumexai, that is, the imperial family and post-family who later established the Liao state. The 4 people that Tuobashiu rushed up here have been overturned by the spearmen. She saw that the enemies that appeared were fierce and undaunted, her small face immediately turned pale, and she kept thinking in her heart, they are not from the Central Plains Capricorn tribe. When did a worldwide army appeared in the Central Plains and claimed to be the Han army? Seeing that the soldier holding the spear was expressionless, and then stepping in silence, Tuobashiu suddenly felt like he was dying. But the next moment, the spearman actually bypassed and rushed towards the Taifo department of the Xiongnu. She was too nervous and held her breath for a long time. The arrows fired by the archers belonging to Lu Yan just now never stopped. Of course they shot the Hun Taifo tribe, who was defending themselves. They just didn't know the result of the battle, but they were suppressed. After the consumption just now, the 50 swordsmen, 61 spearmen and 50 archers are still advancing. They never yell when fighting. They are not fatal but also fighting hard. It feels really true. It's the elite of the elite. UU reading www.Yukanshu. In particular, a team of swordsmen faced the charge of several cavalrymen of the Hun's Taifo department. They first blocked them with shields, and then slashed them wildly with swords. They actually lost 3 men but killed 6 cavalrymen. There is no doubt that the troops claiming to be the Han army are really a strong army. The so-called strong army, all have the characteristics of order and prohibition, and then can withstand huge casualties and fight endlessly. The leading spearmen encountered the Hun Taifur cavalry. Although the Hun Taifur cavalry did not have enough space to accelerate, the casualties of the spearmen were really large. Infantry has a natural disadvantage against cavalry. That is, the cavalry can be condescending, and the infantry on the ground will have subconscious fear when they see a cavalry with a tall horse. There is no fear in the spearmen produced by the system, but the infantry itself has disadvantages, and then they only know how to execute orders rigidly, so the casualties will naturally not be low. What Su Zheng saw was Bas fighting hard, charging in silence, fighting in silence, and dying in silence. He was shocked and envied at the same time, and he wanted to participate in it. He couldn't help but ran to Lu Yan and knelt down on one knee. "My lord, the villain asks for war." Wait. Lu Yan would be distressed for the death of system soldiers, but war is like that. If you kill the enemy, you will be killed. He was watching, waiting for the best time. "Well, you lead the soldiers to kill from the flank." Su Zheng immediately showed an expression of overjoy, yelling promise, and greeted Baz as he ran. "You are allowed, all the soldiers will join me in fighting the enemy." Changed to 2 changes later, at 8 o'clock in the morning and 7:30 in the evening. UU Reading Book friends are welcome to visit and read. The latest, fastest and hottest serial works are all in UU Reading. For mobile phone users, please go to read.